All right. We did it, YouTube. We did it. The conclusion of week 1 of the Overwatch League Pro-Am. Not the strongest way to close out Sunday's matches, but we did it. We started off the 2023 Overwatch League competitive season with the Overwatch League Pro-Am. And what a fun week it was, honestly. Seeing so many Contenders teams go up against the Overwatch League teams. I really enjoyed the games. We had some incredible moments. We even had some incredible moments to really close out the Sunday as well with, Vegas Eternal facing off against Sades, for example, was really fun. It was great to see some players clutch up. We're going to talk about some of those players coming up here as well. But I wanted to record a video to sort of conclude this week, this time with some takeaways and things we learned from the first week here of the group stage between Group A and B. So, for the Mayhem, San Francisco Shock, Atlanta Reign and London Spitfire, those will be the teams advancing from these first couple of groups. But what did we really learn here about, a 5-month break, whatever it is? Is it 5 months? Yeah, it's kind of 5 months. Kind of 5 months since we had a competitive Overwatch League action, so that's pretty insane. Some takeaways from these groups, though. I want to kick things off with the San Francisco Shock, and here we go again. Overwatch League talent talks about San Francisco Shock. But the death of San Francisco Shock was greatly exaggerated. From their loss to Trick Room. They honestly came out and they looked really bad to start the week. They just looked uncoordinated and they were a bit all over the place. And some people blamed ping. For one, I blamed the time zone because in today's final game, they woke up and their match started at 5 a.m. in Korea. So, I was thinking, well, they don't get any warm-up, they don't get any time to prepare for this match, so they're naturally going to be out of it. But they came out and they honestly played some of the best Overwatch they've done so far this entire week. I think they had their very best game here in their last match against the Vancouver Titans. They 2-0'd them. So there were some pretty big differences here, though. I think if you compare the two matches, you can actually see that this is a team that is making a lot of progress and they're figuring things out as they go. This is not at all the team that we'll see when the regular season do start, because they even changed up some of the compositions and some of the roles throughout the week. If you actually go back and look at the first couple of matches from the day 1 of the Pro-Am, Proper was actually playing the sort of primary hit scan role most of that day. Actually, they put him on Cassidy, they put him on Hanzo, for example, and Heesang was playing the Tracer, and Heesang had a pretty okay Tracer. But Proper's Tracer was just different when he came online, so that was a switch they made mid-tournament, where Proper went back to the Tracer and instead they put Heesang on, for example, Hanzo, that he really popped off the last couple of days. I highlighted Heesang and Proper in yesterday's video, so this is going to be another video where I talk about the Shock, but I think it was quite a substantial change, and so I just want to talk about the San Francisco Shock, because I do think there's still a contender in the Pro-Am the further we go down this tournament now as we get to the playoffs, because what they showed us in the last couple of days was very different from what we saw from the first couple of days. Another thing we saw a little bit in their match against Trick Room, but on Colosseo, San Francisco, they actually played Max on the D.Va, and then they played a Kiriko and an Ana lineup next to that. Now, this is a composition that I really like, actually. I first saw it, I think, when Seoul Dynasty rolled out with it against Hydro Spark in the League Scrims. And Seoul looked really strong on this, considering they have Void on D.Va, for example, Prophet playing the Tracer, of course. And Prophet actually had a pretty good hit scan as well. So I love that composition coming out from Seoul Dynasty. And Shock played it here too. They actually played Junbin on the D.Va on King's Row in today's match against the Titans, but they still looked really good on it. And I think they're doing a great job, because Junbin, even though Max is probably like the better D.Va player of the two, the way Junbin just kind of stalled on the payload most of the time, he played Winston on the attack, but it sort of isolated the Tracer matchup as well, so it actually bought time for Proper in these team fights to flank around and find picks early. And also Heesang would play the opposite angle, so you'd have Proper play one side of the map, and then Heesang would sometimes either play with the back line, play with his Ana, Vindime in this case, or he'd play on the opposite side of Proper, and it actually made for quite a decent setup, because wherever sort of Finn is needed on the Kiriko, he can jump around all over the map, heal, support, Susu, etc. But it also sort of gives Shock the opportunity to flank around and find picks from the sides, and it isolates those different matchups. So Hisang, he loves to take like one-on-ones, you know, you can just let him, you know, get some lucky arrows or whatever on Hanzo, if you want to call it that. Or you can sort of support proper, or let proper flank rather on the Tracer, and he can find picks that way. So I really like this composition overall, and I think that this is something that Shock could use as they advance and into the quarterfinals now. I think their matchup, I wish I had it right in front of me. But yeah, they advanced to the playoffs anyway through... despite losing a couple of matches with better map differential. So this is something they could definitely use, and Proper on the Tracer just looks unreal, right? So this might be the comp moving forward, honestly, where Proper plays the Tracer and Hisang plays more of the long-range hit scan. Second point, Atlanta Reign is the team to beat. Now, I spoke about Lip a couple of days ago and sort of isolated his case. I think that he could be an MVP candidate this year. But overall, Atlanta Reign, to me, they just look like an absolute menace of a team right now. Not only do you have Lip playing the Sombra, and he played some Hanzo today on King's Row, where he just like hits ridiculous arrows. Hanzo seems like a big trend right now, so you know, if you're a Hanzo fan like me, for example, you'll be sure to get some highlights. But also, the way they utilize their backline, where you have Vigilante can frag out in some maps, which we've seen in the preseason scrims that were leaked, where Vigilante just like takes over games, but also the Dallas Fuel backline from last year between Chio and Fielder. Like, you just plug that into like their tempo matchup where they put Hawk on the Ramattra instead, and they're like making really good decisions, and they're actually looking really good. Stalker on the Mei, that's something that's good to know about the Atlanta Reign, that Stalker can play the Mei to a pretty good level. And honestly, they just made like great decisions in today's final matchup that they had. It was a bit of a stomp. I think they played the Valiant. I'm just gonna pull it up mid-video. I don't care. They played, they played the Valiant. So it was a bit of a stomp. You can't, you know, take too much away from Atlanta's match against the Valiant. But if you just look at some of their Ramattra gameplay, I think they're great at like engaging, disengaging, setting up Stalkers, setting up the Mei walls. There were plenty of times where we isolated Krawi, for example, on the Valiant. And it just it gave win conditions for the Atlanta Reign. So I think they played the tempo comp of Ramattra really well with their engages, disengages, and giving themselves opportunities to turn fights around. And also bait opponents in, and then you can sort of counter-engage with Chio on the Lucio. So I love the composition from the Atlanta Reign. And when you take that Ramattra composition that we now know that they're competent at, and then you add that to Donghak coming out and playing the Winston, playing the Wrecking Ball, Vigilante, as I said, he was on the bench that map even. They're just so flexible and can play so many different compositions that I really do think that Atlanta Reign is the team to beat right now. So I said it already in a video earlier this weekend, but you know, these videos might get a bit repetitive, but there you have it. I think Atlanta Reign are looking fantastic right now. And it's good to know that Ramattra comp is doing pretty good. So that's actually my next point as well. The Ramattra Brawl. It seems like the most versatile composition right now. We saw teams like the London Spitfire play the Reinhardt. They prefer the Reinhardt. And honestly, it was quite interesting to see the Ramattra versus the Reinhardt sort of composition and how it varied a little bit. I think the London Spitfire overall, this tournament in the group stage, they took it a little bit slow. In many fights, they would actually like wait out their opponent. If their opponent used, you know, like a Baptiste amplification matrix, you know, they'd wait it out, or they'd try to build, London would try to build their own ultimates. Or, you know, if they had to wait for a cooldown, they would wait for it. They played very tactical. We know they're a communication focused team based on what Christopher told us last year when he won Coach of the Year. But they're a very tactical, very smart team, and you can really see that in their play. Like, they're not rushing to always, you know, just go in, dive in, and you know, aggro and hope you get picks to succeed. Actually, like with this Reinhardt pick, they slowed things down and, you know, really set themselves up for success. And I think that's a strength as well if you're an Overwatch League team. Stupid man. Please just do this. If you're an Overwatch League team, if you're able to slow the game down and then capitalize on the mistakes of your opponents. Another match London did that this weekend was against Saints, for example. They slowed the game down versus Saints, and they're able to you know, set up Sparkin for success, something I talked about yesterday's video. But they did the same in the Reinhardt comp, where, you know, if Hadi needs to wait for his shield to come back up, they will wait for Hadi to get his shield back up, and then they can re-engage. They utilize the charge pretty sparingly to sort of like close distances and like really use it if they want to aggro forward. But Ramattra seems to be the more well-rounded pick right now. Obviously, we have a lot of off-tanks in the league now, or former off-tanks who specialize in picks like D.Va, Sigma, Zarya, Sigma, what have you. And so if they're not comfortable in the Reinhardt matchup, then playing the Ramattra, it offers a great solution for a lot of these teams to play something that is kind of similar, where you can engage and really take up damage for your team, obviously, or you can disengage rather, and wait to turn some of these fights around. That's something that Atlanta Reign Hawk did really good in today's match against the Valiant. But we've seen a lot of different teams. They really like to play this Ramattra because it's well-rounded. You can engage aggressively, get into Nemesis form, get into the enemy backline. And we even saw like a nano Ramattra in today's matches, I believe. It like got to the backline and you just like two-shot people. It's crazy. So that is an option for a lot of these teams, and I think we'll default to some of these Ramattra compositions later down the line in the tournament, and then we'll see how teams decide to counter this. Are we going to see more slow-paced play from the Atlanta Reign then, where you play like super far back and you try to build some distance with like a Zenyatta comp or something? It's yet to be determined, but it seems like Ramattra offers a great solution for a lot of these teams. If they're questioning their composition, do they want to commit to the ball, the Winston? They're quite unsure. Ramattra is a great hero to learn in this current meta because it offers you some stable compositions that you can play. All right, my fourth and last takeaway of the weekend. Contenders teams playing the Overwatch League teams is just flat out fun. The amazing moments we've had this past weekend, all the memes, talking about all of these players and getting to know them, sometimes having them style on their opponents, whether it's both diffing Tracer in what's obviously like a matchup that is a bit of a joke, as the Overwatch League returns to regular season play, or whether it's about Wub heads, Wub popping off on his team, Timeless, having a great time. I honestly just had a really fun time watching this Pro-Am to see more of the Contenders players and actually see them go head-to-head against some of the Overwatch League players themselves, and the memes we create around these players. Kaffa, for example. Kaffa is another player that had some standout moments on Winston and really took it to the San Francisco Shock in their matchup as well, but also in the final match against Trick Room, Kaffa as well. He stood out on the Winston and made some really nice plays, and maybe that's something that he can actually show on his resume as well. Maybe that is something he made an impression on somebody with his Winston play. It's something he can take with him. Doomed, I think as well, popped off in the very last match here for Timeless against Trick Room. So it's been amazing to see. Infected, we know he's an up-and-coming tank player. So it's been great to take a peek at some of these players. Saints, of course, it's like a stacked roster. So I really just enjoyed this weekend. The memes we created along the way, getting to enjoy Trick Room beating the San Francisco Shock was like a highlight of the weekend. Just like the sheer amount of fun that it was. It felt lively. It felt like the community came alive and really had like a fun moment together. I also want to shout out Saints versus London Spitfire. Another banging. It might have been like the match of the weekend, to be honest, like London Saints, because it was so competitive. It was back and forth, and that final Bisselwur map was just like a whirl. It was so much fun to watch that with Saints almost making the comeback, right? So I had an amazing time this past weekend, and I'm really glad we got the Pro-Am to see some of these Contenders teams facing the Overwatch League teams. At some points throughout these days, yes, the Overwatch League teams, they overpowered their opponents. It was one-sided. Hell, that even happened between like the Atlanta Reign and the LA Valiant, to close out today, day 4, right? So yes, there is a bit of an Overwatch League diff at times, but I think the takeaway for a preseason event, I love this event. And I hope we get more like it, maybe in the off seasons and stuff like that, because it's honestly just been a blast to watch this with, been part of the watch party streams with Avast, etc. It's been a lot of fun. And I'm sure the Contenders players really, they appreciate this opportunity as well to play some of these Overwatch League players or teams in a professional setting and getting a chance to like prove themselves on broadcast, right? So I think this is enjoyable for everyone and everyone having a pretty good time. So that's been a highlight this past week, and I can't wait to get into next week seeing Group C and Group D go head-to-head. Maybe we'll get the Contenders teams actually make it out of groups. I don't know. Team Peps, Group C. We'll see how the Gladiators are. I still think, though, I think I cleared up my mind, and I think Gladiators will eventually make it out. But Team Pips on the Reinhardt. You know, never underestimate Crown Drop. All right, that's gonna be it for these videos here, highlighting the weekend of Pro Am play. Please subscribe to the channel if you like these videos. Like the video, it helps me as well, making more of these videos, and I hope to make more of these and stay consistent on the content grind. We'll see what's coming up this weekend. I'm going out of town for a few days, so won't be any streams from me or videos or anything like that. But as we get back into week 2 of the Pro Am action, maybe I'll see you on the content grind again. So take care, everybody. Have a good week, and I'll see you next week.